Last July, a bomb exploded at a mall in Cagayan de Oro City, killing 6 people and wounding 48 others. In August, a car bomb exploded in Cotabato City, killing 8 people while wounding 40 more. And just this morning, a group of MNLF forces attacked the city of Zamboanga, killing 6 people, wounding 24, and holding hostage 220 civilians. This is not the first time the Philippines has experienced terroristic attacks from different groups that have different agendas in relation to both local and national government. With these attacks, the security and safety precaution in public places such as airports, seaports, train and bus terminals, and even malls have doubled or tripled to ensure the safety of the people who frequent these areas, usually by checking their personal belongings for any dangerous weapons or substances. Though the intentions are pure, some people found these measures as an inconvenience. Where does the line draw between invading one's privacy and ensuring the safety of others? Is there a law against terroristic acts, and what are its provisions?
Good evening. You are watching Legal Help Desk on the Solar News channel. This show is about making the law work for you by giving legal advice on topics that matter to you. I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno.
And I'm Attorney Nepomuceno. Tonight, we will discuss the acts of terrorism, what you need to know about what constitutes an act of terrorism and what you need to do as a vigilant citizen to prevent it.
Our guest for tonight is Attorney Nikki de Vega, Managing Partner of the Nicolas de Vega Law Office. Good evening, Attorney Nikki. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Good evening, Karen. Good evening, Rod.
Good
Thank you for
evening.
having me.
Attorney
Yes.
Nikki, well,
Very appropriate topic because
but,
just this morning, Zamboanga was attacked by MNLF forces.
And they took several civilians up to this hour, right?
Yes.
It's still ongoing.
Yes, and before we delve deeper into the topic, we have with us on the phone General Domingo Tutaan Jr., spokesperson for the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Good evening, General Tutaan.
Attorney Karen, good evening. Good evening to all our viewers.
Yes, good evening. General Tutaan, I'll start asking you right away. What are the latest developments on the situation in Zamboanga City and the coastal villages nearby?
Well, Attorney, the situation right now in the area of Barangay Santa Catalina and Santa Barbara of Zamboanga City, there's a standoff right now, as been reported since early this evening, between the forces of the Miswari Breakaway Group. The AFP is still in the area together with the local government units, Crisis Management Committee, established by the mayor of Zamboanga City, so that we could prevent any escalation of the violence within the barangay itself, and of course any spillover in other areas outside Zamboanga City.
General Tutaan, do you think this is a tactic by the MNLF to gain an audience with the government?
Well, one of the reasons why they were there this morning when we were monitoring their movement was purposely to go to Zamboanga City Hall to raise their flag, which we cannot allow as a matter of our sovereignty as a nation. There's only one flag, the Philippine flag that we have. So I would believe that is probably a purpose that they are trying to undertake.
Okay, and why do you think they chose Zamboanga City specifically?
Well, there are a million reasons to that, but Zamboanga City is at the heart of the Western Mindanao side, closer to the areas of ARMM in Basilan and Sulu. So probably that is where they chose the area to launch this tactic of theirs.
Okay, and what do you think is the government prepared to do to contain the situation? Are they ready to negotiate with the MNLF?
There have been already talks by the Crisis Management Committee led by Mayor Beng Climaco Salazar as earlier this morning when they established the committee itself. Attorney Karen, the AST and the PNP forces on the ground are members of this committee, and that is the reason why we have been advising the mayor as far as what are the possible actions could be undertaken or the assessment of the situation that is prevailing or was ongoing at that time.
Okay, thank you, General Tutaan, and good luck with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So, as
Yeah,
it
may
happens,
standoff pa pala ngayon, no?
There is.
Yes.
It's ongoing. So, Attorney Nikki, do you think this qualifies as an act of terrorism? I mean, based on our laws?
I would think that this would be considered as an act of terrorism because under our Human Security Act of 2007, terrorism is broadly defined. No? If you commit any of the acts mentioned in the revised penal code such as piracy, mutiny, kidnapping, murder,
kidnapping. And
Even serious illegal detention.
Yes, plus that, and also illegal possession of firearms or crimes of destruction, such as what is happening here. No, they are illegally detaining people. Tapos they're also utilizing explosives and also parang tinatawag na crime of destruction din yon. It can be classified as an act of terrorism subject to other two conditions. First, these acts must sow the condition of extraordinary fear or panic among the populace, which is nangyayari naman sa Zamboanga ngayon. People are panicking because of what they're doing. And the third condition is that they are asking for an unlawful demand from the government. As mentioned by the good general, they're demanding that their flag be raised, which is of course contravenes our sovereignty, hindi naman pwede yun. So that would be considered as an unlawful demand.
Now, is there a situation that you'll have a lawful demand? For example, say someone, let's say he's not been paid his salaries by the government and he's making a lawful demand. Would you then qualify it as maybe not an act of terrorism because he doesn't meet, or the act doesn't meet that requirement?
Halimbawa, let's say he is demanding from his employer the payment of his wages, so he kidnapped, let's say, a group of children. So it's not against the government, and neither could you consider the demand unlawful kasi talagang he deserves his wages. So it would not be considered as terrorism
Under this act,
under this act, but rather something else punishable, such as kidnapping. So dun siya mahuhulog, but not under terrorism.
Okay, and what makes the anti-terrorism law more effective or powerful than if you charged, for instance, yung katulad ng hostage taking in Zamboanga? So, assuming it doesn't qualify as an act of terrorism under the law, what would be the difference, considering it's both technically detaining people? Ano yung magiging difference ng remedies?
That's actually a very good question. Kasi when you talk about the penalties, the penalty for the Human Security Act is 40 years imprisonment. So
Without parole, no?
Without parole. And that would hold true for most of the crimes in the revised penal code, like murder. Ganun din naman siya, reclusion perpetua, which would also translate to 40 years. However, the Human Security Act actually is utilized more as a tool by government and police agencies so that they can capture these criminals, these terrorists. There are reliefs given which are beyond what you expect in the normal criminal laws or even the Constitution.
Yeah, one interesting thing would be even getting custody of them. Kasi di ba, in a normal crime, kunwari yung illegal detention, kailangan mo, katulad yung kay Napoles, that's the crime charged against her, illegal detention. They had to get a warrant and then arrest
Follow
her.
the usual
Pero
procedure, no?
in this law, if you're suspected or accused of a terrorist attack, ano yung, kailangan mo pa ba mag-apply for a warrant? How fast can the government officials apprehend you?
Okay, well, usually may surveillance yan. So, not necessarily because you're suspected of a crime, they can arrest you. Because that would violate the Constitution.
Yes.
Kasi general rule talaga, there should be a warrant of arrest or a search warrant. Pero warrantless arrests are sanctions. If you're subject of a surveillance and they have applied with the Court of Appeals, kasi usually what they would do is ask for yung sa wiretapping, this is also a very good feature of the Human Security Act. Before, under the wiretapping law, hindi ka pwede, you cannot record or intercept communications of people. You can't do that. No, you can't even ask for a court order for that. That would be violative of the law.
In fact, if you get evidence from that,
Yes.
it's
Not
supposed to
admissible,
not admissible,
yeah.
right?
Yes, so hindi mo rin magagamit useless. But under the Human Security Act, these police, these agencies, law enforcement agencies, can apply with the Court of Appeals. Ex parte to, meaning there's no hearing, they apply, and they can be given by the Court of Appeals the authority to intercept yung communication of the suspected terrorist. Now, you would see, ang peculiarity rin, hindi kailangan charged in court. So, even by mere suspicion. So, they can already do that, intercept messages and record by virtue of the order of the Court of Appeals. So, as you mentioned a while ago sa detention, now, if they see you, let's say, they think you're a terrorist, they've intercepted your message, they can immediately arrest you and then detain you. Before kasi, if they detain a person na suspected of a crime, i-inquest ka agad yan immediately by the prosecutor, and then they have periods depending on the penalties. Kung light penalties, within 12 hours, an information must be filed in court, or 18 hours, or 36 hours.
So in
maximum.
other words, under this law, mas mabilis.
Mas
You can
mabilis,
be caught and you can be
Walang
detained.
limitation ng mga ganong number of hours.
Okay. Now, sorry to cut you, Attorney Nikki. We have some questions from our viewers. One of them is from Charles, and his question is the government well equipped or prepared to combat any act of terrorism? Oh, that's a little tough. Not really a legal
Kasi
question.
it's not just a legal question. Parang it goes into ano ba yung
Capability.
arms natin, gano'ng karami ba yung
Technology, diba?
manpower, di
I
ba?
think it would depend on the act of terrorism itself, or what organization we're talking about. And I'd like to ask that question. There is a provision in the law that you can adjudicate or declare an organization a terrorist group.
Yes, a terrorist.
Now, what is the relevance of that? If you declare a group a terrorist group organization, what does that exactly mean insofar as that group is concerned?
Well, firstly, there's a presumption, na you're doing something illegal, and being a member of a terrorist organization is deemed illegal because of that. Unlike before, hindi naman very because we have the freedom of assembly of organization. This one, so if you're classified as a terrorist group, pag nalaman na miyembro ka, you can yes,
Okay, so but the government has at least substantial power on this part. Our next question is from Marshall. Aside from bombing in public areas, are there other crimes that are considered as acts of terrorism?
Yes, marami. Oo. It's not only bombing, limited to bombing, murder, or even the use of firearms. Hindi kailangan na bomba lang or explosive. Arson, rebellion.
Yung pinag-usapan natin kanina, hostage taking, illegal detention, di ba?
Oo. So, not necessarily bombing and not necessarily in malls.
Yeah,
Kasi
that's
pwede
true.
rin naman in a vehicle. Kasi even yung carnapping or hijacking forms part of the crimes rin that which would constitute as terrorism.
Yeah. I think kaya na-associate kasi pag chine-check nga, usually parang bomb yung hinahanap pag pumunta ka ng mall, di ba?
Yes,
Tapos yung 9/11 pa in the US. So na-associate sa tao, terrorism equals bombing. Okay. Now let's take a short break. Legal Help Desk will return after these reminders. You are still watching Legal Help Desk on the Solar News channel, and we are still joined by our guest, Attorney Nikki De Vega of the Nicolas De Vega Law Office. Good evening, and thank you for being with us again.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we won't call you the expert in terrorism because
Parang pangit pakinggan.
it doesn't sound so good, no?
Terrorist lawyer.
Yeah, terror lawyer. And now, you were talking earlier about the application, diba? If you're gonna apply for, let's say, wiretapping or to conduct surveillance to a group that you suspect to be a terrorist group, you have to apply ex parte in the Court of Appeals.
Yes,
The Court of Appeals will grant you that. But there are certain conditions, no, before
Yes,
the Court of
there are
Appeals.
conditions.
What are these conditions before the Court of Appeals grants you that allows a police or a law enforcement officer to conduct the surveillance?
Well, at least in fairness to the lawmakers, they tried to comply with the Constitution. No? So before the Court of Appeals can grant that, kailangan that the person suspected, gusto mo i-intercept, should be committing, has committed or is attempting to commit those acts of terrorism. Second condition is that the evidence, the intercepted message or communication should be essential. And then third, there are no other readily means available of evidence. Parang hindi pwedeng kaagad yun na yun, they want to apply. They should try other things. They should exhaust other remedies. So before they resort to tapping, wiretapping or intercepting messages.
Okay. Ako naman, Attorney Nikki, I have another more practical question. Yung mga nakikita natin sa malls na nag-check ng bags or even yung sa mga ibang buildings, pagpapasok ka, bubuksan pa yung trunk ng car, and it is really a hassle, lalo na kung nagmamadali ka. This practice, is this something that is part of the Anti Terrorism Act? Or basically, our law against terrorism? Oo. Parang, can individuals complain and say, this is too much of a violation of my privacy, or what justifies these acts by private individuals?
Okay. Well, sad to say, no, hindi tayo pwede magreklamo. Because these are private places, private individuals. We have the Constitution which protects us from unlawful search or which protects our privacy, but that is only applicable insofar as government officials are concerned. So the policeman cannot do that to us, but security guards, since you are entering a private place, you have to comply. Kasi sabi nga ng isang Supreme Court case, if you don't want to comply, then don't go inside
into
that
the mall or
don't go to that place.
That building. Okay, so you cannot really complain na parang ang grabe naman mag-search tong security guard na to. Kasi hotels also search, diba? Open your bags. But yung other question ko would be also, yung if they catch you with like, kunwari, pen. Kasi pag gun, it's kind of obvious. Pero yung mga pen na merong kasamang sharp, yung...
Poisonous dart or something.
No.
James
Yung
Bond.
meron kasi nabibentang ganyan sa Baguio, yung parang mga pen with a knife inside.
Okay.
Yeah. So it can be a personal weapon. Pero pag mahulihan ka nun, ano yung extent na power ng security guards, for instance, to detain you for that or to even confiscate it?
They can't detain you, but they can refuse entry sa inyo. Or they can't confiscate it because that's your personal property kung aalis ka naman. So,
In other words, they can't invoke this law.
This is not
But
the
only-
law applicable. Hindi yung...
For security purposes or security reasons, they'll prevent you from coming in. Now,
it's another issue though if it's a gun. Tapos wala kang lisensya, wala kang permit to carry. They can arrest you for that.
I was
I don't-
thinking more of
yeah, I
sharp
don't-
objects and ano, no?
yeah. I don't intend to get arrested for terrorism, no. Pero in case
I hope so, Ron. Or else I'm gonna start looking for a co-host.
but in case I do, in case someone suspects me or arrested me on that basis, how many days yung mga detention? Can you talk about those detention period? Kasi normally yung mga there's certain specific rules of the number of hours of detention before they have to release me unless they charge me, di ba? What are those rules?
Okay. Dito umaaray ang mga human rights group. Okay. So because here, you can be detained for 3 days. 3 days. Under the revised penal code, hindi dapat ganun eh. You should be subjected to inquest and then within the number of hours, 36 maximum, and information must be filed in court. Otherwise, you have to be released. Pero dito, sa Human Security Act, you can be detained for 3 days. It can also be extended if there's an actual or imminent threat of terrorism. And but of course, may safeguards din. They have to seek the approval, if they want an extension, approval of a judge or justice and or officer of the Commission on Human Rights. Actually, pinapasok na rin dito yung human rights. And then, may mga reportorial requirements. You have to present I have to present you personally to the judge. They have to inspect if you're the person or if you have been tortured. May mga ganong safeguards. Although, now it's longer. You can be detained for a long time.
Yung isang interesting part ng law is actually the ability of someone accused to get damages from the
Yes.
government pag hindi pala tama.
that's an
So how
interesting
much is this amount that you can get from the government?
If you are acquitted of the charges against you, you are entitled to damages, liquidated damages of 500,000 for each day that you were deprived of your liberty.
Oh, imagine. So kung yung 3 days na yun, you earn 1.5 million. So Ron, it might not be a bad idea. So go and then come back.
It be a good money making. Pero dapat ba in good faith yung what are the rules there? I mean, basta kung wala lang nahanap na probable cause that you're a terrorist. If the
you're
court,
acquitted.
you're acquitted.
Which is dangerous also because of our justice system na matagal. So you could count
take a
years.
while, yeah.
Up to now, wala pa tayong kasong
Yes.
ganyan. And I think also the government is afraid of that because the appropriations will come from the police agency. They're liable to pay kung kulang, the Anti Terrorism Council, at kung kulang pa, from the Office of the President.
Okay.
Now
Hindi
the
pwede kumuha sa PDAF.
Now the wiretapping part, the rule that allows you to tape or to record discussions, may mga exceptions yan, di ba? There are certain
Yes,
conversations. Which conversations between which people ang hindi mo magamit as evidence?
I'm thankful for this exception. So, a lawyer and his client, so hindi pwedeng i-tap yan.
Okay.
A doctor and his patient, also a journalist or broadcaster and yung kanyang ini-interview.
Kung
more of
priest confess, confess a priest. Ganun.
Confess siya about...
About the act. Can the priest be... let's say, na-wiretap yung ano niya sa confession to a priest. Pwede yun kasi it's not under the exception.
Yes, pwede.
Technically, okay. All right.
Okay.
All right.
Let's have a final question from Belinda. What should an ordinary citizen like me be vigilant for when reporting potential acts of terrorism? To whom or where should I report these?
Okay. That's a difficult question because yung terrorism usually mga confidential yung sa military information. Actually, even information procured or communication na wiretap, confidential information yan. But generally sa police, no? But I've encountered people who tell me, attorney, mukhang feeling ko kasabot yung police dito. Or sometimes, when we do not trust the policemen or our military, the suggestion there, because certain courts in the Court of Appeals are designated as yung terrorist courts. So if you do not trust yung local policeman mo, kasi paminsan sa provinces, may mga those in cahoots with the subversives or the terrorists, you can go to the courts or sa judges to ask for help. But definitely, you should be vigilant and report these acts of terrorism. You could forestall the death of many people by being vigilant.
That's great. And of course, they won't be liable for damages. Not like
Yes.
the government. Kung nagkamali sila.
Oo,
ng
walang
pagsuspension.
500,000 liability yun. Oo.
Okay.
But this act was it was enacted in 2007.
Yes.
There's not a lot of jurisprudence under this law, is
Oo
there?
nga, may successful
may
case na
successful
ba
case na ba?
na file and na
Wala pa.
convict? Wala pa.
Wala pa. The only case is about questioning the constitutionality of this law. Oh, yun lang. Tapos wala na. There's
And it
silence.
was upheld obviously as constitutional.
On procedural grounds. Kasi nga, ang sabi ng Supreme Court, the petitioners had no standing. They weren't charged with a crime, so they had no right to question the constitutionality.
Okay.
Any more? Are there amendments that were done recently? Are you aware of any amendments that are being worked on this law? Or
Wala namang significant amendments, but other laws have been passed to strengthen our measures to combat terrorism, like Republic Act 10167, which gave more power to yung sa Anti-Money Laundering Council. Also, Republic Act 10168, that is the Terrorism Financing Prevention and Suppression Act, so which punishes financing terrorist acts and giving also teeth to examination of bank accounts.
Yeah,
Bank
which
dito.
reminds me, yung anti-money laundering law
Yeah.
was actually, it's also related to this, di ba?
Yes,
Pag may
oo.
acts of terrorism and mahanap na fina-fund, it can be, it's part of the suspicious accounts, then pwede nilang
relevant
i-trace.
siya sa mga
Yeah.
banking, banking laws, di ba?
Yeah.
Very,
Yes.
Kasi kung wala
very
rin naman
relevant.
silang pera, wala silang pambili ng
Exactly.
pampasabog or even guns, hindi rin nila makukommit yung acts.
Alright.
Okay.
Nako, wow, ang bilis, as we were talking about earlier, mabilis ang oras dito sa Legal HD. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for tonight. We would like to thank our very special guest, Attorney Nikki De Vega of the Nicolas De Vega Law Office, for being with us tonight. I'm Attorney Rod Nepomuceno.
And I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno. Join us again next Monday as we discuss your legal rights. Good night.